Virgil Goode served in Congress from 1997 to 2009, 12 years, 6 terms. Made a bit of a political progression over that period of time, and he's culminating and ending up in the right place. He started out as a Democrat. They didn't like him too much, especially when he did things like voting in support of the impeachment articles against Bill Clinton. And eventually they had enough of him, and I guess he had enough of them, that he moved to independent, I believe, first, and then to the Republicans. And now, as you know, those of you who are regular here, I know we get some different makeup at each meeting, but this is actually the third National Committee meeting that Virgil Goode has come to address us. And always glad to hear him, and he's, as Gary said, he's, certainly ranks among the top of all those who've walked the halls of Congress. He acquired his BA from University of Richmond, his Juris Doctor degree from the University of Virginia School of Law, served in the Army National Guard, was elected to the state senate in Virginia at the ripe young age of 27, and as I mentioned before, he was elected initially as a Democrat to Congress in 1996. While he's in Congress, he stood out on a number of issues that are very near and dear to us, including illegal immigration and opposing amnesty and supporting real immigration reform. He's been a strong advocate of veterans health care, which bears mentioning as we have just come off of Veterans Day. He served on the Liberty Caucus with Ron Paul and other liberty-minded members of Congress, the few that are there or were there when he was there. He's been a staunch defender of gun rights throughout his career. He's been a staunch supporter of the pro-life position. He's been faithful to his oath of office, and let's give a good round of applause for Virgil Goode as he comes to speak to us.
Jim, thank you for that very kind introduction. It's great to be here in Fort Worth. It's always a pleasure to be with the Constitution Party committee. And I will have to say this, my brother-in-law, James Brumfield, came with me, and he was in Dallas for a number of years. And I hadn't been to Dallas for over 2 decades, and I cannot believe the growth in the Fort Worth, Dallas area. It's enormous, and when I saw the 5-layered interchange, I thought the interchange up at Springfield around D.C. was big. It dwarfed that. So in some ways, Texas is bigger than Washington. And I guess Mr. Wade would agree with me on that.
Everything's bigger in Texas.
You're right. I want to say it's also an honor to be here with your founder, Howard Phillips. Howard has been on the cutting edge of a number of different issues, and I salute Howard for being out front in asking for an inquiry into impeaching Barack Obama on a number of different accounts. I will have to say I'm amazed that someone, maybe not using personal money, but would utilize millions of dollars to keep from producing a birth certificate. Now, I have heard that it's on the internet. I am not the most internet savvy person in the world, but I have yet to see it there. And I realize that for most persons, the reason that you keep birth certificates secret and locked up is identity theft. I'm not too sure we got too many that's going to steal Barack Obama's identity if he puts it out there on the internet and shows it to the world. So I hope maybe Howard's resolution here today will encourage that to come forward, but I'm not too sure. I'm also honored to be here with Darrell Castle today, and Darrell, thank you for taking us quickly around the world. You beat Phineas Fogg's trip of, around the world in 80 days by a whole lot. And I want to say thanks to Jim Clymer for all that he does and for his travels around the country on behalf of the Constitution Party. I'm going to make a few observations about the 2010 election. I want to salute and thank all of you that worked at the state level for assembly races, for county commissioners and district attorneys. I know there were a number of successes around the country, and as Gary pointed out, you have to build, start at the local level, go to the state level, and then go on and get some members of Congress, members of Senate, and hopefully more national persons in office that understand that we need to follow the Constitution rather than the New York Times and the Washington Post. Observations on the 2010 congressional election. I do believe that the results of November the 2nd will result in less spending. But the answer to the question should be, is it going to result in reduced spending? It will be less, but I am anxious to see whether the new House of Representatives will cut spending in a number of areas. And I think there may be some. The Republicans will probably pass a budget resolution that won't get passed by the Senate that will have some reductions, and that is a step in the right direction. But will they talk about National Public Radio, and I don't want to get off item by item, but I'll just throw out a few. Big hoopla on defunding public radio because they fired Juan Williams. That's not the issue. The issue is totally defunding and saving hundreds of millions of dollars by defunding all of public broadcasting, and I hope that in 2011 we'll see the House of Representatives do that. I'm not too sure they will, but that would be a correct approach. And talking about funding for foreign countries, Darrell touched on this, and sending so much money over there. I know when I got on the Appropriations Committee, they asked me if I wanted to be on the Foreign Ops Committee, subcommittee. I said, yeah, that's all right with me, but I'm going to tell you up front, so far I haven't voted for any foreign aid budget, and if I get on the committee, I'm not going to vote for it then. And believe it or not, they didn't put me on that committee. So I'm not optimistic that the Republicans are going to cut foreign aid, because a number of them in leadership positions are as bad as President Obama and the Democratic leaders of spending more overseas to buy more friendship, and we're certainly not getting anything for the billions that we are spending over there. It went up significantly under Bush, and I thought it couldn't go up much at a greater rate, but under Obama it's even gone up at a greater rate. I am anxious to see what the Republican-controlled House will do, and I just picked out 2 areas rather than doing a laundry list, which I have. I will say this. Newt Gingrich, when he led the revolution or takeover in 1994, came in and did make some good cuts. One minor one was doing away with ICE for each member's office every day in the U.S. House of Representatives. And I salute John Boehner on his decision to fly by regular aircraft and pay the regular fare and not have a special jet. I salute him on that. But let's ask, are they going to do some of the tough things that they need to do? And this can be done just by the Republicans in Congress. They can cut the members' representational allowance for each member of Congress. It was about, for me, it was about $1.2 million. Those in California, probably $1.4 million. It varies depending on how far the member's district is from Washington. Will they cut the MRA? That's the expense money for each member of Congress that pays salary, that pays staff, that pays computers, pays printing, and those costs. I'm going to be anxious, and I hope they will do it. Now, if any of you are here from Arizona, Bob Stump was a Republican, but he many times would save hundreds of thousands in his MRA. And I want to tell you, the thing I thought I did the best on, several years I saved $500,000 that wasn't spent out of the MRA, and it was always between $250 and $500. I'll be anxious to see if the Republicans, and they can do this on their own. They don't need to go over and get Senate approval where you got a Democratic majority. They can institute this in the House. Mass mailings. And they can institute a policy that I think should be adopted of no mass mailings at taxpayer expense. And they don't have to go over to the Senate to say, will you go along with it? Because now they, like cutting the pay for the members of the Senate and the members of the House, they could say, well, we tried to do that in the House, but it went over to the Senate and it was defeated. And they might say, well, we're going to cut the Department of Education, and they might do it in the House and it goes over to the Senate and gets defeated. These things I'm just talking about now, we can hold the Republicans accountable if they don't deliver on cutting MRA, cutting out mass mailings, and reducing their expense money, and that only they are in charge of that. And let's see if they follow the dictates of the American people on November the 2nd and have the courage to cut themselves. If you want to cut across the board in federal spending, one of the best things to do is set an at-home example. I'm going to cut me first, and then we're going to have to move out and cut more federal agencies and reduce our number of federal employees. Let's see if they cut committee staff. I want them to do that. They can cut committee staff, and it will not interfere with the operation of the U.S. House of Representatives and the United States government. They can do that with no one else, and they are in charge. So I am hopeful that they'll cut the MRA, eliminate mass mailings, and reduce committee staffs and their own staffs, and set an example that hopefully would spread through government. Now, I'm not wholly optimistic about this, but let's see what will happen. Now, I will say this. If the Constitution Party had a majority in the United States House of Representatives, I think those two things would be done right away.